Hello and welcome to Community Report. I'm Vicki Pritchard. The Victory Light Expo is one of the longest running and largest conventions, metaphysical conventions in the country. Victor Perutta is here with us in the studio to talk about it. Victor, welcome. It's always wonderful to have you in the show. And it's always exciting to talk about this festival because it really is a spectacular event and hugely successful.
Well, thank you for inviting me back. It's nice to be with you again.
Well, recap for viewers who may not be familiar with the festival, and they must be living in a cave if they are not, but about the beginnings of this, how it started.
Well, it started in 1992. I had a bookstore at that time, Victory Books in Covington, Kentucky, and a psychic was visiting from out of town. We were just talking across the counter, and we were kind of reading each other a little bit, and she just said, "You should have a psychic fair." And I thought, a psychic fair? You know, what's that? I'd never been to one at that time. And I started one. A few months later, we had one, and it was a huge hit. And here we are 21 years later, and we're still going. It's become kind of a tradition in the community twice a year.
Has it always been in Sharonville?
We've been in Sharonville for about 12 years,
okay.
But we started at the Round Hotel in Covington, and we quickly outgrew that.
Yes.
And then we went downtown to the convention center, and we went to the Northern Kentucky Convention Center. But we, like the Sharonville Convention Center. A lot of people like it because it's really central. It's closer for people coming from Dayton and Columbus, and it's got free parking, and people really like that. So that's been our home for 12 years or so.
And talk about some of the things that people will see when they come to the festival. What are some of the venues that you have offered?
Well, first of all, we try to make it a very fun experience. So when you come in, you'll hear live music. We've got a musician that'll be playing throughout the entire weekend. We have dance performances throughout the weekend as well, belly dancing.
Okay.
And that's always fun, and it's actually very spiritual as well. And so kids love that, and kids love crystals and stones. We have over 200 exhibitors. You could do some shopping there. We'll have some high-end jewelry, some fine jewelry this time, as well as crystals and clothing items, books, wellness products, aromatherapy products. And of course, we'll have about 50 plus psychics and healers that you'll be able to get a psychic reading while you're at the show.
And do you find, is your audience composed of people who follow anything metaphysical to those who are just maybe curious and it's their first time?
It's everything. We get people from all walks of life, all socioeconomic levels. We have people that have been coming to every show for 20 years. They just love it. They make a weekend of it. And then we have the new people that come in. Of course, people who need guidance will come to our show and get a reading or a healing, and they'll also attend the seminars that we have if they want to learn something about it.
And that's an interesting component of it as well. Talk about these seminars. You have a substantial number offered this year.
Yes, we do. We have more this year than ever. We have 66 seminars, and 62 are free with paid admission. And these topics are everything having to do from holistic health to psychic development to mediumship. 15 of our seminars will be providing the audience members with free readings.
Wow.
So it's a great opportunity if you've never seen a psychic in action. You get to see a medium giving messages to the audience or doing different types of readings. And you'll find people who you can talk to about things that maybe you haven't been able to talk to with your family or friends. For example, what does your dream mean?
Right.
Or what's going on with these numbers I see all the time. People are always getting 1111 or 1212 on their clock.
Interesting.
And
yes.
It's every time they look at their clock, they're getting these numbers.
And there's significance in
They
this.
are significant, yes. And we'll have astrology, which is always a huge topic. Two of our area's best astrologers, one of them, Brad Kachunas, this is his first time with us. He's a licensed professional clinical counselor and a Jungian trained psychotherapist who has integrated astrology into his practice.
Oh, that's fascinating.
And he's going to be talking about how your astrological chart reveals insights about your psychology. Isn't that interesting?
Absolutely. And is this a fairly new, is he the first to do this, or is this a fairly new area?
Well, he works actually as a prison psychologist.
Really?
Yes, and he has seen many common trends in the astrological charts of the prisoners that he counsels.
Is that right?
Yes,
So it
and he's
completely
actually
validates what his theory, what he's saying.
yes, and you can get right to the heart of the matter. What is this person's issue? What do we need to work on in the course of his therapy? It's revealed in their chart. Obviously these days there is still a bit of a rift between traditional psychology and the metaphysical arts.
Sure.
But I have a lot of psychologists that send their clients to me for readings.
Is that right? So
Yeah.
it's starting to blur, the lines are blurring a little.
Exactly,
more
and there are
acceptance.
fields such as transpersonal psychology, which integrates traditional psychology and new studies in consciousness, meditation, and how they can benefit people. So all these traditional and non-traditional disciplines are starting to merge. And I think it's a good thing.
Absolutely. Are you seeing, and over the course of the years, I'm sure you've probably seen, for lack of a better word, trends or interests, things that people really are focused on. What are you seeing this year? What is the hot area, for lack of a better description?
Well, I think paranormal is still very hot.
Okay.
You turn on the TV and you're going to see a paranormal show.
Right, that's true. They're everywhere.
Right, and I think people are interested in a little bit more than just, is your house haunted? I think they want to know a little bit more about it. And so we've brought in one of the world's leading authorities on the paranormal. That's Rosemary Ellen Guiley. She's written 50 books.
Wow.
And she'll be presenting 2 topics, which are, I call them beyond beginner. They're a little bit more advanced. The first one is on persistent hauntings.
Now, what is that?
What does
Ghosts
that
that just
mean?
won't go away? What
They
does
won't
that
go
mean?
away, exactly. And so, people have had paranormal problems in their home. They have all the symptoms, weird noises, electrical disturbances, seeing people out of the corner of their eyes,
Right.
And more. And once in a while, they'll have trained psychics come by and do clearings and tell them what's going on. But every now and then, those clearings don't take. And so, therefore, it's called a persistent haunting. The ghost won't go away. She'll be talking about the reasons for that. And one of the reasons is because your home may be located in what's called a portal. And a portal is where spirits come in.
Good heavens.
Yes. And other problems that would cause that situation would be underground streams and rivers. They could change the energy of your home and make it so that it's one of those homes that have negative energy. Every time you're in there, you're depressed or you're sick. I mean, there are buildings that are called sick buildings. Everybody who works in them gets sick or is depressed. And it's because of the negative energy there that is either paranormal with ghosts or geological. It has to do with underground, the way the building is positioned on the topography. In general, buildings in valleys tend to have a lower vibration than buildings on ridges.
Really? Interesting. Now, that's something I'd never heard of, but it really is fascinating.
Yeah, but everybody has had the experience of going someplace and feeling really good, and going someplace else and just getting a creepy vibe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You
and you
can't
wonder,
put your
well, what's
finger on
going
it.
on? I've had that experience where I've been walking in nature,
Right.
and I've had this feeling of somebody watching me.
Sure.
And it's as if they're saying, go
away.
You're not
Right.
welcome here.
Right.
And so you've run into a spirit that happens to have a home there. That's what's happened. And as a matter of fact, Rosemary's second seminar is on entity contact experiences. So it's for those people who have run into entities, whether they're ghosts or dark forms.
I was going to say, when we're talking entities here,
and there are,
describe that.
She has written several encyclopedias about the different entities that people could run into.
What are some of them?
Well, one of the really popular ones are called shadow people. Shadow people are black in form. They're darker than the surrounding environment in which you might find them. People often, there's a classic appearance to them, and you'll hear this over and over again, Vicki, even for people who've never even heard of a shadow person or the concept of what a shadow person is like, but they'll see a dark form out of the corner of their eye, and they'll almost always describe it in a similar way. These look like shadows. The fingers are often elongated. They're often seen wearing a hat.
Oh my.
And they sometimes appear with red-colored eyes.
Good heavens.
These are non-human.
Right.
And so they're called entities.
What is their purpose? What do they emanate from?
We don't know that yet.
I mean, is this dark? I can't fathom that this is...
There are theories. But, you know, there's, as Shakespeare said, there's more under the sun than you and I will ever know.
True.
You know, and there are these sorts of
what are some
energies.
of the theories about them?
I've got my own theory about them because I've investigated them before because I do paranormal work. As a matter of fact, I've got my own paranormal team, Victory of Light Paranormal, who has a booth at Victory of Light.
Wonderful. I did not realize
People
that.
could go to Victory of Light Paranormal's booth and tell them their ghost stories and maybe even sign up to have an investigation done at their home. And we don't charge.
Oh, is that
It's
right?
free. We just try to help people.
Sure.
But I've had calls from people where, you know, they've seen these dark forms. They don't know what they are. And usually they're in basements or in lower parts of the house.
Yes.
And I went into one house, and as soon as I walked into the basement, I started feeling sick to my stomach.
Really?
Yeah, you start getting this twisted feeling in your gut, and you feel very uncomfortable. And the owner of that house had actually seen this dark, large form come after her. And it frightened her.
So they're abnormally large in size. It's not just elongated.
Right. They can sometimes be large, but sometimes small. They vary in size. And to me, I think they're another life form. And this might sound a little sci-fi, but I think there are semi-physical beings. You know, we are physical.
Right.
You know, we have a physical body,
Right.
but there are beings around that are semi-physical. So you can kind of see them, but you can also see through them.
Interesting.
You know, ghosts, and then, you know, throughout folklore, the fairies, the elves,
Yes.
all the
Yes.
beings
Right. Good point.
that are worldwide throughout the folklore, through every culture, they exist.
So the shadow people,
Shadow people.
Are they of that same ilk? I mean, this isn't something new, but historically there's been documentation of people seeing this. How far back does it go, just in terms of your research?
It goes back forever. It goes back forever. And I think these are extraterrestrial, or possibly perhaps a race of beings that are learning from us. You know, when I've tuned into them, I think that they're very intrigued by humans.
So not necessarily nefarious by any means.
Not necessarily nefarious.
Just
I think that
observers.
I think what they're really attracted by is the human capacity for love. That might be something that they're not familiar with. That might be something they're trying to understand.
Okay.
We don't know much about them. But Rosemary, if anybody knows anything about shadow
That's
people,
her area of expertise.
Rosemary is the expert.
Well, that's
you know, so we brought her in from out of town. She lives on the East Coast, and she'll also have a booth there all weekend, so you'll be able to visit with her. And if you have an odd sort of situation like this that you've been afraid to ever mention to anybody because they'll think you're crazy.
Right, who's going to bring that up? Exactly. How often are you in a room and you assume someone else has seen shadow people? That's exactly right.
Right.
So here is an opportunity to talk to people
Learn a
who
little
are
bit about
receptive.
it, exactly, and see what you can do about it.
Because there is something that can be done
I
about
have
it.
gotten many, many calls throughout the years of people who have interacted with shadow people.
Really?
Yes.
Somehow communicated with them.
Yes, entire families where they've seen them for generations. They seem to follow
really?
that family.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so that's one side of the Victory of Light Expo is the
Right,
paranormal.
right, yes.
But that isn't
It's
everything
not,
about
and
the
that's the
Victory
beauty
of
of
Light
it, too.
Expo. We have a lot of really spiritual seminars too.
Absolutely.
Things having to do with meditation and the healing arts. One thing we're having this time, April 7th, actually, it's on a Sunday. Sally Hilvers, who's an executive with the Cincinnati Metro here, she studied labyrinths. And labyrinths are those mazes.
Yes.
There's a pattern on the floor,
Right.
and there's a contemplative way of entering a labyrinth. It's like a maze, like the one in The Shining. But
Yes,
this is
yes,
one where
right.
you don't have to. You can see.
Exactly, not as ominous. So to
And
speak.
and you enter the labyrinth, and there's a way of walking through the labyrinth that's very meditative.
I have read about this.
Yeah, and so it's very healing to the soul. And Sally is actually bringing a labyrinth that will be on display on Sunday at Victory of Light. And you can attend her seminar. I believe it's at noon or 1, Sunday morning or Sunday early afternoon. And you'll be able to experience walking the labyrinth.
And can you, these are, labyrinths can be placed in your yard, correct? Part of the landscaping as well? Does she instruct about that as well?
Yes, you can. As a matter of fact, there's a Facebook page called Cincinnati Labyrinths.
Really?
Yeah, there are many throughout town. Many of them are
Interesting.
outside, and they're open to the public. And some of them are really, really large. Some of them are small. There's a labyrinth in Chartres Cathedral in Europe.
Oh,
and
okay.
Sally studied at Grace Cathedral in San Francisco.
Okay,
So
sure.
she learned about the labyrinth as
Yes.
a contemplative practice. It would be similar to doing the rosary. It puts you
Yes.
in a meditative state.
Right.
And it helps for you to tune into the divine.
And truly to focus in that moment to just be
Present.
Yes,
Present.
exactly.
Yes. And so you're not thinking about your problems,
The
you're
10 zillion
focused on
things,
the
exactly.
now.
Right.
Yeah. And similarly, there's another presenter we have for the first time. Her name is Jackie. Let's see, what's her last name? Jackie Cunningham, I believe. She'll be talking about how to take a spiritual retreat.
And what does she suggest? What does that involve, a spiritual retreat?
She has an interesting sort of concept about it. You can take a spiritual retreat where you can go and spend the weekend at Gethsemane
Yes.
in Kentucky.
That's
That's a
true.
spiritual retreat.
Good point.
But if you want to take a spiritual retreat during your lunch hour, you can do that too. And if you only have 5 or 10 minutes, there's a way to do a spiritual retreat without going anywhere.
So she shows how doable it is in the course of a day.
Exactly. And it's amazing how powerful just taking 5 minutes
Very
off to
true.
yourself and get into a centered mental state.
Very true.
And all of a sudden solutions to your problems are arising from deep within. We all have access to that.
Yes.
And that's what Victory of Light's all about, how to tap into a deeper level, how to tap into some potentials you may have that you maybe have glimpsed, but there are ways to awaken these potentials and ways to use these potentials to help you make better decisions throughout the course of your life.
And that's a good point, too, for people who might just have just a hint, an inclination that they might have some ability. But what you have are professionals, people who can tap into that and show them how to expand upon that.
Right, they've already developed it.
Right.
Everybody has it.
Yes.
It's in
Do you believe that everybody does have?
every single person. I believe it's part of our equipment. I believe God gave us our intuition to help us survive because we don't always have all the facts we need.
Absolutely
And
true.
not only that, the mind not only reveals, but it can deceive.
Yes.
We can rationalize. We can be
Yes.
talked into things.
That's such a good point.
But what if you can tap into that deep part of you that knows
Yes.
where the answers really are?
Right.
And there are techniques for doing that. And so one of our seminars will be about psychic development. Another one is how to use divination techniques like psychometry, which is holding an object, or doing dowsing with a pendulum or a dowsing rod.
Yes.
And you can get answers to your questions quite easily doing that. Or using cards or crystal gazing, or there are hundreds of divination techniques. And one of the things that I have found, and I think this is actually a trend, that I've noticed in my work as a psychic medium, I get a lot of calls from parents whose children are seeing ghosts or talking to dead people.
Now, see, that's fascinating.
And then they're wondering what to do because they can't really talk to anybody because they're afraid
Right.
of the ostracism.
Exactly. How do you counsel them?
It's a delicate thing. I mean,
Right.
what you mustn't do is invalidate that. Oh, you're just making it up.
Right.
That's just an imagination.
Right.
But I got a call from a professor at Miami University, and during one of her classes, one of her students came up to her and just said, gave the names of 2 people she saw in the instructor's energy field.
Is that right?
And they were dead relatives.
No.
And provided this professor with messages
Good
from
heavens.
these relatives.
Oh, was this
And
some
they
wise
were-
counsel that they were offering, or messages that resonated that she knew?
She knew without a
This was
doubt that the
a fact.
student was seeing somebody she knew who had just died and who had an important message for her. And that student is disoriented because,
This was the first time for this, or
yes, and it
One of
just
the first.
started happening spontaneously. So the professor asked if the student could call me, and I said, of course, and I talked to her. And, most psychics start opening up at some point in
Yes.
their lives. It
Right.
could happen at any time. It a lot of times happens when children are very young, they're very psychic, but then it goes away when they're 7 years old and they're starting to get indoctrinated. But then it
sure.
opens back up when they're teenagers because their bodies are going
Puberty. I
through
know we've talked about
hitting
that,
puberty,
yes.
and the hormones are starting to activate.
Right.
And what starts to happen is the pineal gland, which is in the center of the brain, and it is the gland that gives us a sense of the passage of time, of night and day. It's the gland that causes certain animals to hibernate in the wintertime and to know exactly when to awaken in the spring.
Right.
It's about that. The pineal gland is stimulated in teenagers.
Okay.
So a lot of times they'll start having these psychic experiences and they don't know what to do. And sometimes they think they're going crazy.
I'm sure you
and
think they're schizophrenic or something.
exactly,
I'm sure.
because they're hearing voices and they're
Voices.
seeing things. So I was able to comfort this student at Miami University. One thing that, because this is a trend, psychic youth, I invited Travis Sanders, who is a young
Yes.
psychic who was featured in the A&E show Psychic Kids, Children of the
Right.
Paranormal, with Chip Coffey. And he's from the Cleveland area, or the Toledo area, actually, northern Ohio. And he will be talking about psychic youth because he was on that show when he was only 19. He's only 24 now.
Right.
But he knows what it's like to be a psychic kid.
And it will resonate with other young people.
Exactly.
Having
And-
him there.
Exactly. And so his presentation will be geared toward psychic youth and their families.
So you're not crazy, your child's not crazy. This is really happening.
Yeah, I know when I was a child, I was always extremely empathic, just too sensitive, way
Yes,
too sensitive.
yes.
And I didn't realize what that was. And it was kind of interfering with my life because it was confusing me because I would always
Sure.
be able to feel other people's emotions.
Right.
And hear their thoughts. And it was very confusing for me when I was in a crowd and I started kind of losing a sense of my own center.
Yes.
I kind of,
yes.
where am I?
That would be
you
a
know?
huge risk, I'm sure.
Exactly. And, a lot of people, a lot of psychic and sensitive people deal with that. If you know what's going on, you could start using that not as a detriment, as a problem, but as a talent, as an advantage, as a skill, and you could start using it no longer where it's affecting you in a dysfunctional manner, but where you're using it constructively to help yourself and to help other people. So Travis will be talking about that to the crowd, and he'll also be doing a free mediumship gallery,
Oh, really?
for members of the audience, where he'll be
Yes.
giving messages from loved ones in the spirit world. So I'm thrilled to have Travis, and it's always nice to be, kind of like an elder, being able
Exactly.
to help younger people
Right, that's
who
very
are
nice.
experiencing what I went through when I was a kid,
Yes.
and they need a little direction. I've been there. I can help them out, give them a little guidance, perhaps direct them to some books to read or some things to look at on the internet, and they can start realizing that it's a gift instead of a curse.
Exactly. That's probably something you didn't have so much of available to you at the time when you were young and
That's
this was
correct.
happening.
And, you know, I remember being completely lost. And then one day when I was 16, I walked into a used bookstore and I found a book on metaphysical and psychic topics. And I didn't even know there were those kind of books around. And I bought the book and I devoured it. And it all of a sudden everything made sense.
And how comforting that must have been.
It was so comforting. It was great. As a matter of fact, I still have that book. It's on my bookshelf, and I still refer to it every now and then. But it was written by a clairvoyant.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, and what happened with me when I was a teenager? I was 15. I started having precognitive dreams, which simply means dreams that you dream about, and then at a later time they take place in real life, almost like you're watching a video.
And people will say they've had a feeling of deja vu, what have you, but this is something.
This is a little bit more than
you
just
see it like a
deja
film
vu.
in your mind, and then there it is.
Exactly,
in real life.
and I even would have written down the dream or told people about it, and then I would experience it exactly as it was dreamt. And I started thinking as a teenager, well, how in the world could that have happened?
Yes.
You know, I mean, did I time travel, or, you know, it started causing me to question the nature of time and reality.
Sure.
And I started realizing that consciousness, that within you, which is looking at me, that is your awareness, it is not trapped inside the body. You know, it can travel outside of the body. Good point. You know, so in your dreams, it travels into the dream world, and then it comes back and it brings information or knowledge. Or
things are not isolated within.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's interesting. It makes it creates an appreciation for who we really are, instead of because we're afraid we have to fit into a certain box.
Right.
See, so if you're tired of fitting into that box because it's become too small, come to Victory of Light.
This is the place.
Come to the Victory of Light Expo, April 6th and 7th at the Sharonville Convention Center, and a whole new world will start opening up for you.
What's a website people can go to find out more? Because I'm sure you have much of the information of who will be attending on your website.
All the information is on our website, and our website is victoryoflight.com.
All right, Victor, thank you so much. I'll have all sorts of questions for you once we turn this camera off, but thank you so much for coming. It is always such a pleasure, and I know you'll have another wonderful success.
My pleasure. Thank you.
You've been watching Community Report. I'm Vicki Pritchard. We've been chatting with Victor Peruta. Thanks so much for watching, and please join us again next week. If you're a community leader and interested in being on Community Report, give us a call here at the ICRC 772-4272.